Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tyrion Cuthbert, Attorney of the Arcane. Today, we are starting the fourth case, Severed Ties. Let's get started. In the kingdom of Wyverngard, there is a gulf between what was lawful and what was just. Here, ideals were just fairy tales. They were pleasant to think about, but they distracted from how the world really was. You're naive, but I've been starting to think that if everyone else was like you, the world wouldn't be the way it was. But the world was the way it was. Not even you, with all of your special divine powers, could change that. I can't believe Cuthbert used the Eye of Horus on the client. He's becoming more and more reckless, and I think McCoy is just making him worse. I wonder what he was like with his real mother. He's definitely nothing like Ryan was. Fuck's Ryan. Adopting him was a mistake. Wow. I don't like Ruby. Mia's better. Mia's better. Is something wrong, Timora? No, it's nothing. Well, the trial is about to begin, and all of our futures are at stake. Let me see. Is it? Yeah. We get fucking Tyrion stuff. It's just, these are the same. But Celeste, my personal bodyguard and my closest confidant. She's cheerful and sweet and beautiful. She has this way of brightening my day, and I'm happy I get to work with her. Of course, miss. Actually, what do you go by now? I prefer just Beatrice, but they'll be using my legal name anyway. Beatrice muttered some kind of mantra before clapping her hands together. She'd been doing that a lot since we'd met. It must have been some kind of meditative ritual for her. I couldn't help but side-eye Eris. I was a little annoyed with how careless she was being. Is something wrong, Timora? I'd just like to know what you think you're doing here. My father sent me to accompany Beatrice to the courthouse. It's a new environment for her. We do need to keep her condition in mind, after all. I wasn't so convinced. Her father had a lot more sense than that. Not to mention that Eris always likes stirring up trouble. She took a lot of pleasure in complicating my jobs. It was apparently her favorite pastime. And the boss, doting father that he was, just let her do as she pleased. I hope you understand how much you're risking by being seen with me. You were already pushing it when you approached us at the academy. Don't you think you're worrying too much? You've been preparing for this, haven't you? Just keep your head low and make sure no one connects you to your father. You know how important this trial is. Why? Would knowing my true identity cause some friction with your son? He's not my... Oh, speak of the devil. I spotted Cuthbert and McCoy walking into the courtroom with the other members of the gallery. I guess after a little argument, he wanted to see how this trial would turn out. McCoy spotted me and gave me a friendly yet uncomfortable smile. Cuthbert froze for a moment, before looking away and walking silently into the courtroom. Parental troubles? We had a disagreement earlier. It's nothing to worry about. If you say so. I was wary about what he saw in Beatrice's mind. He'd always been a good kid, but he was also really stubborn. It clouded his judgment sometimes. He hadn't been practicing law for very long. It didn't help that his string of victories was getting to his head. But I was sure that once he'd seen enough of what the courts were really like, he'd understand why I needed to do this. The trial is about to begin. Do you really have the time to be making small talk here? Prosecutor Steelwind approached the three of us, tailed by a familiar face. Wallace Nightgrave. He's accompanying me as my aide for this case. So, can I assume you'll be prosecuting? Of course! I would never pass up the opportunity to face the infamous Ruby Timora. Really? If I remember correctly, you haven't even beaten Tyrion once so far. I mean, to be fair, the last case she was trying to help him win, so... Oh, it seems that struck a nerve. I might be able to use that later. Miss Steelwind, don't strain yourself. What's that look for, Beatrice? You seem almost surprised to see me here. Considering the circumstances, I thought you might rescue yourself. I am more than capable of remaining objective, especially for a case of this much importance. Well, I hope your mind is as strong as you think it is. Miss Steelwind! Nightgrave looked unusually reprimanding and concerned for her. He was really averse to confrontation, wasn't he? Oh, I love a good reunion. The deck was already stacked in our favor. I just needed to follow through and get this over and done with. After that, we'd finally have everything we needed to topple the 4 pillars.
Order!
Court is now in session for the trial of Beatrice Freyga. Miss Steelwind, is the prosecution ready?
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. The defense is also ready, Your Honor. She definitely looks less self-assured than usual. Her history with Beatrice may be throwing her off.
Very well. Let's begin the proceedings. Prosecutor Steelwind, could you please list the charges?
Your Honor, the defendant is charged with first-degree murder and grand theft. As many of you know, Beatrice Freyga is the formerly missing daughter of the now late William Freyga, and the victim of the murder is William Freyga himself.
Yes, I'm well aware of that. The people of Ivengard will certainly mourn the loss of House Freyga's head.
Please, the only people who mourned him were the banking house's shareholders.
On that matter, did you also say the defendant is accused of grand theft?
Yes, Your Honor. The crimes took place during the Lord's Ball, an event that was hosted in Freyga Manor yesterday evening. The Haraldson Hall of History was hosting an exhibit within the manor. They were showcasing several magical artifacts donated to the Ivengard Historical Society. One of these items was the Sword of Spell-Eating, a magical artifact that allows its wielder to nullify magical effects. Obtained evidence. Sword of Spell-Eating. The Sword of Spell-Eating is an ancient artifact. When wielded by a creature, that creature and anything connected to them, physically or magically, are immune to all harmful magical effects. Legends say that it was forged through a blood contract between a mage and a demon. The prosecution believes that the defendant stole this item to break into the victim's study, which was secured with a magical lock. After breaking into the study, she attacked the victim and slashed his throat open using a letter opener. He died of blood loss shortly after. Obtained evidence. Autopsy report. William Freyga. Died at 3:12 a.m.
cause of death was blood loss after his throat was slashed open. Both carotid arteries were severed, meaning the death must have followed mere seconds after the wound was inflicted. Body shows several scratch marks on the face and back. Traces of illusion magic were also found on the body. I see. Does the prosecution have a motive?
William Frege and his daughter were not close. Saying that they had a strained relationship would be an understatement. In fact, 5 years prior to the murder, Beatrice abandoned and fled her home. She went into hiding and cut contact with all of her friends or family. Her whereabouts were unknown until she contacted her father a week ago.
Objection!
You're green! You're green!
My client left the Frege household because of her toxic relationship with her father. She wanted to create a life for herself that was free from his influence and abuse. I won't disagree with your claims, but that simply highlights how desperate the defendant must have been. She had clearly fallen on hard times and begrudgingly contacted her father for financial aid. I have no idea why they would schedule this meeting during the yearly Lord's Ball. But nevertheless, several witnesses did see her that night. And these same witnesses saw her storming out of her father's study in anger. Her father must have refused her request for aid, so she decided to murder him to claim his inheritance. It's a good thing we prepared for this.
Obtained evidence. William Frege's inheritance. Beatrice fled from her family 5 years ago. Okay, it's just that, what you said. As per your agreement, this testimony will be confirmed by Miriam Frege in court. Oh, wait, no. Beatrice fled from her family home 5 years ago and went into hiding. In retaliation, William Frege told Miriam Frege that he would remove Beatrice from his will. As a result, she wouldn't receive any inheritance after his death.
What you're saying is all conjecture, Steelwind. You don't have any evidence to confirm why my client contacted her late father. Yes, I'm well aware that the defendant has refused to tell us what they discussed. And, be honest, Steelwind, do you seriously think that my client committed these crimes in spite of her condition?
Condition? What do you mean by that, Miss Timora?
Why don't you tell him, Steelwind? Tell the court about my client's disability. Your Honor, Beatrice Frege is legally blind, however, legally disabled.
Oh. That's a way of putting it.
That's a convenient way of putting it, Steelwind. My client is completely blind.
Completely blind? Is this true?
We have several medical documents and testimony from several chirurgeons, I guess, attesting to that fact. My client is unable to see anything.
Obtained evidence. Beatrice's blindness. Why is that not a picture of Beatrice? Why is it some man? Beatrice Frege is completely blind. She is unable to see anything through her eyes. This has been verified through several medical reports and qualified chirurgeons. What is the meaning of this, Miss Steelwind? Do you expect me to believe that a blind woman performed any of the acts you're accusing her of?
Excuse me?
Yes, blind people can still commit murder.
I'm glad you also see how ridiculous these claims are, Your Honor. If the court would just allow me to elaborate. Your Honor, the prosecution's first charge is grand theft. My client would have needed to break into a display case that was magically secured. Performing such an act would be a difficult task for anyone, much less my client. And the second charge is first-degree murder. My client would have needed to use the sword of spell-eating on the lock leading to the victim's study. Then she would have needed to grab a letter opener, overpower the victim, and deliver a precise and fatal blow to the victim's neck. Does any of that sound like a reasonable theory, Your Honor?
I'm compelled to agree with you, Miss Timora. It all sounds quite ludicrous, to be perfectly honest. This is just awful. The Steelwinds have always been at odds with the Freygers. They're just taking advantage of the Duke's death.
Objection!
Enough! Your Honor, the court has not seen the evidence that supports this case. Your Honor, the court has not seen the evidence that supports this case. Nor have you listened to the Inquisition's testimony regarding their investigation. Until you have done so, you are in no position to pass judgment.
Very well, Miss Steelwind.
I guess the little lady has some claws after all. But it didn't matter. Their case against Beatrice was questionable at best. Frankly, it was surprising that Steelwind even went through with this. It was only a matter of time before the judge saw things my way. To begin, the prosecution would like to call Commander Orm White to the stand. Commander White, please testify to the court about the Inquisition's findings.
Right. Witness testimony. We didn't want to cause panic after the sword was stolen, so we activated the manor's silent security system, put an anti-magic field over the entire manor. We did a search of the house, and we found the stolen sword in the defendant's bedroom. It didn't look like she was going to run, and Crown Prince Astros told us to stand down, so we just kept a close eye on her. William Frege was in a bad mood that night. He'd already locked himself inside his study. But an hour later, we entered the study and found him lying dead in a pool of his own blood. The lock was still engaged, and no one teleported in. The perp must have temporarily disabled the lock using the sort of spell eating. We have testimonies that say the defendant was seriously in debt. I guess she murdered the victim to get part of his inheritance.
Their case against Beatrice was just as I predicted. I had already had a countermeasure to disprove the existence of any motive. All I had to do was present that to the court.
No, You're green!
We're pressing everything.
We didn't want to cause panic after the sword was stolen, so we activated the manor's silent security system, put an anti-magic field over the entire manor.
Wait, doesn't the sword make the wielder immune to magical effects? An anti-magic field would have only disempowered everyone except the thief.
Yeah, well, we didn't know what the sword could do until after the investigation. Up until then, we thought it was just a dusty old artifact.
That seems pretty negligent. Are you sure you're qualified for your position, Orem? The situation was unprecedented for everyone involved. One could hardly expect an ancient artifact to have magical capabilities. Anyways, what did you do after the theft, Commander?
We did a search of the house, and we found the stolen sword in the defendant's bedroom.
That seems like a strange conclusion to jump to. My client hadn't set foot into the Frege Manor in years. After being gone for so long, her bedroom had to have been repurposed for something else.
I'm not sure about the details, but one of the defendant's sisters refused to let the servants disturb that room. I guess she was hoping that her sister would come back one day.
Leave.
It didn't look like she was going to run, and Crown Prince Aster told us to stand down, so we just kept a close eye on her.
And why would the prince tell you to stand down, Orem?
I don't fucking know, he just told us. Why am I... That's a bullshit question! Well...
Crown Prince Aster knew the defendant well. He was confident that she wasn't going to flee the scene. Are you sure he just knew her well? If I recall correctly, the prince is still very adamant about her innocence.
The Crown Prince is vouching for the defendant. Is this true, Miss Steelwind? Yeah, the Crown Prince also isn't a lawyer. or a cop or anything.
It is. However, I believe that the evidence found throughout the investigation proves the contrary. Are you sure your judgment isn't simply being clouded by your jealousy? Your fiancé was previously engaged to my client, after all. You're enjoying this a bit too much?
William Frege was in a bad mood that night. He'd already locked himself inside his study.
Did anyone see him enter the study?
A few people. One of them was Lee Frege, the victim's second daughter. She said that she was extremely irritated, so he went into his study for some peace and quiet. I guess his meeting with the defendant put him in a bad mood.
But if the manor was covered in an anti-magic field, how did he lock the door magically?
I'm not sure how. The locks on the manor aren't affected by anti-magic fields.
How? The magical locks generate a smaller anti-magic field around themselves. The two fields cancel each other out. It's akin to multiplying two negative numbers together. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot about artificery. Is what she's saying true? Yes, overlapping anti-magic fields are a well-studied phenomenon. It's a frequently used failsafe. I would just have to take her word for it.
But an hour later, we entered the study and found him lying dead in a pool of his own blood.
Who discovered the body?
The same person who saw him last, his daughter, Lee Frege.
I really wish it could have been anyone other than her. Was anyone else there with Leaf when she happened upon the body?
Yeah, supposedly. One of the servants got himself locked in a nearby storage closet, and he heard the violent attack through one of the air vents. When he finally got out, he told Leaf and they went into the study accompanied by some knights. The lock was still engaged, and no one teleported in. The perp must have temporarily disabled the lock using something like the sort of spell eating.
The sword is integral to the case against my client, so why is the description of its capabilities so vague?
To be honest, the sword is magical, but it doesn't seem to behave like any spells we know about. And we can't identify its magic like we usually do with most artificery devices. According to Lord Haraldson, its powers are demonic in nature. But if you ask me, that's all a bunch of hooey. Either way, it's obvious that it doesn't follow the normal rules of magic.
What? What is it, Miss Timora? It's nothing. Cuthbert was watching from the gallery, so he must have heard that too. I need to focus on getting the client an acquittal first. I could worry about Cuthbert later. Either way, we've tested the sword's magic on similar locks. When used correctly, it is capable of disabling the lock on the Duke's study.
We have testimonies that say the defendant was seriously in debt. I guess she murdered the victim to get a part of his inheritance.
You have testimonies? Wouldn't an official record be more valid evidence? Timora, you and I both know that your client's creditors are not the type to keep such records. So you're admitting that you're relying on hearsay? One could conclude that. But it doesn't matter if we can prove that this debt exists. The Frege estate is unimaginably vast. Debt or no debt, that amount of wealth would be a tempting boon to any individual. She had a point. Has Frege owned every baking house in Wyverngard? People could only dream of having that much wealth and power. The prosecution's case against Beatrice was already really weak. I was surprised she even brought this to trial in the first place. I already had testimony from someone else that directly contradicted the commander's testimony. Once I present that to the court, the case was as good as mine.
Objection!
Your Honor, the prosecution's case against my client is riddled with holes. And the prosecution's proposed motive is the largest among them.
What do you mean, Miss Timora? Of all the elements in this case, the motive's the most believable. Your client would have had much to gain through her father's inheritance.
That may be. That's assuming my client had anything to inherit at all. What? Your Honor, my client fled from her psychologically abusive father 5 years ago. William Frege was a petty and vindictive man. Do you honestly believe that he'd leave his inheritance to someone who disobeyed him so egregiously? No, he'd do everything in his power to make sure she didn't see a shred of his wealth. Yes, we're already well aware of this. The moment she slammed her cane down, I noticed her wince a little. She was getting more and more heated. I didn't realize her rivalry with Beatrice was that personal. On the night of the murder, the victim made the decision to disinherit the defendant. However, his murder deprived him of the opportunity to submit his will to his attorney. This only further proves the defendant's motive. She would have needed to act quickly, lest her father submit the changes to his will. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Steelwind. William Frege didn't disinherit my client that night. Disinherited my client 5 years ago when she left. I have witness testimony from Miriam Frege, William's youngest daughter. By her own admission, her father disinherited my client before she fled the household. That's why she left. What? She never brought that up during questioning. Why would she release that information to one of her family's enemies? If you don't believe me, why don't we call her to the stand and ask her ourselves? What have you done, Timora? I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, it's clear we won't get anywhere until we hear from Miriam directly. Bailiff, please escort Miriam Frege to the stand. Miriam, is the defense correct? Did your father disinherit Beatrice 5 years ago? Yes. And you didn't think it was necessary to share this information with me? Well, you never asked. If I recall correctly, you were also tight-lipped during questioning this morning. The witness had just lost her father. You can hardly expect her to recall every detail that's relevant to his murder. Which raises a more concerning question. How did you extract this information? Who knows? I have always had a way with people. Miriam, please testify to the court about how you found out about Beatrice's disinheritance. Yes, of course. After my sister's accident, my father said that she was unfit to inherit our noble house. He declared to our family that he would be removing her from his will. It was 5 years ago, but I remember it well. One day we all woke up and discovered that Beatrice had fled from our home. She left a note for us, and in it she renounced her name and denounced my father. And are you sure this all happened 5 years ago? Yes, even now I can remember everything clearly. I see. Her speech was getting slower, and I could have sworn that her words were slurring. Nightgrave seemed extremely concerned for some reason. And Leaf was there with you at this meeting? Yes, she was. However, Leaf couldn't have possibly been there. She was starting to swear as if she couldn't keep her balance. Was this trial getting to her? Hey, are you okay? Of course,
She's dead, Jim.
What?
By the scaled lord!
Is that blood? Bailiff, find anyone capable of casting healing magic. Escort them to the courtroom immediately.
After some scrambling, a couple healers were able to help Nightgrave stabilize the prosecutor. In all the chaos, I caught a glimpse of her. There were deep wounds and lacerations on several parts of her body. She must have used some kind of illusion to hide them, but the mages dispelled it to identify her wounds. They took Steelwind out of the courtroom on a stretcher, but as they were doing that, she grabbed Nightgrave and rasped something into his ear. He looked confused, but he simply nodded and made his way to the witness stand. But not before passing a message on to the bailiff, who seemed equally confused.
Mr. Nightgrave, explain yourself. What is going on? Why would Miss Steelwind prosecute if she was so gravely injured?
I'm sorry, but I wasn't actually here as Miss Steelwind's aide. I was here as her doctor.
Her doctor?
The truth is that Miss Steelwind was violently attacked at noon today. She was in critical condition, but she insisted on prosecuting the case anyways. She suddenly showed up to my house and asked me to channel my necromancy to keep her wounds closed during the trial.
Skilled lord, why didn't she just recuse herself?
She must have known. If anyone else tried to prosecute Beatrice, I would have handily won the trial. Nevertheless, she showed up when no one else would, and she did it all despite the risk to her life. It almost made me respect her a little. Anyways, is there any need to prolong this trial, Your Honor?
What?
Even you must acknowledge how weak the case against my client is. In addition to that, Miriam's testimony shows that my client had nothing to gain from her father's death.
Miss Timora, Miss Steelwind has been gravely injured, and you're still only concerned about...
The only thing I'm concerned about is seeking justice for my client.
Even so, we cannot move forward until we find another prosecutor.
And how long do you think that will take, Your Honor? It's been nearly 12 hours since the murder took place. That gives us, what, 36 hours? After that, every magical trace at the crime scene will fully disappear.
But there might be someone...
If Steelwind had simply allowed another prosecutor to work this case, we wouldn't be in this situation. She took a risk, and now she has to take responsibility for that. Wouldn't you agree, Your Honor? I wasn't completely proud of winning this way, but I wouldn't let an opportunity like this pass me by. The judge was clearly unhappy with this turn of events, but Steelwind didn't leave him any choice.
It seems that there aren't any prosecutors available to immediately take Miss Steelwind's place. We will take a brief recess. After that, I'll deliver my verdict.
Objection!
Hi, Tyrion.
You look a bit odd. Reversed like that.
Your Honor, I'm afraid you can't pass a verdict just yet. Mr. Cuthbert?
Cuthbert? What the hell are you doing?
I don't know.
But what I do know is that there was a massive contradiction in Miriam Frega's testimony. And that is the end of this part. Yeah. Tyrion is the prosecutor. Well, we'll continue this. I'm pretty sure we're gonna go on and investigate stuff. We're gonna go back to the past, to before the murder occurred. Let's do that next time. This is a very short episode. My apologies. Bye-bye!